Hi, I'm Gail Sturgis of Talent Align. In this short presentation, we're going to look at finding better ways of valuing IT and digital work in organizations for compensation and career purposes. Our problem statement is, we really need to find new ways of expressing the value of people in the IT and digital world based not on jobs, but on, for instance, roles and competencies, and variable salary based on criteria important to the organization. We need to get rid of current performance-based pay systems. They don't work, and pay bonuses when relevant on a teams basis. Failures happen, and when they do, we need to identify the learning and celebrate it. The immediate problem with this is that there is little inclination to move away from the current system, due mainly because it will be difficult to define and because it may be difficult to get labor acceptance. Another problem is that most large organizations run Agile and Waterfall side by side, so we can't make wholesale changes to jobs as many of them still exist. Yet another problem is job titles. This is twofold. Firstly, HR have been trying to limit the number of job titles within the organization. This is understandable, as we have really had uncontrolled job titling in the past. However, if it restricts the ability of the organization to identify new avenues of work, it's a constraining problem that needs to be addressed. The other problem with job titles is that job titles are now being used across a broader target group, which makes it extremely difficult to analyze and understand what jobs actually exist. Let me give you an example. In a client organization, the developer job title only goes up to a partisan grade C5, but this organization needed to have developers in the D band, as do most organizations today. So they looked at the list of permissible job titles and chose the title project manager as this job went into the D band. Consider now the problems that exist. If the organization wants to employ more actual project managers, they can't because they already have too many, on the books anyway. If these highly skilled developers, now called project managers, leave, what will analytics tell us? We won't know that we're actually losing high-level developer skills. This job title rationalization exercise needs to take reality into consideration, especially with organizations that are moving to digitalization and agile. Up to now, life has been relatively simple. Our organizations have been based on jobs that have defined activities and responsibilities. These are defined in a job description and are grouped into job groups and job levels. Our selection processes, training, and reward are all based on this. But the problem now is, with digitalization and agile, the concept of a well-defined job has exploded. It's just not working for us anymore. Traditional IT structures and processes have looked something like this. We've had teams of specialists in the different areas and a product development life cycle that moves the product from one area to the other until delivered to the client. This was the basis of our IT role progression matrix that was used up to around 2016. It showed how the jobs at the time progressed through the different job levels based on the popular job evaluation or grading systems. This led on to the competency matrix that showed which competencies grew as the jobs grew. At that time, it was fairly simple and linear. People generally progressed up within a single discipline, such as application systems management in IT. But then the concept of Agile started to grow, and along with that, new structures and processes brought about by digitalization and Agile that are totally different. We now have multifunctional teams, and each team is responsible for a product or an element of a product, from inception to delivery. The entire process is now within a team, and the process is iterative. That is, changes are allowed, in fact welcomed, because the end result needs to be exactly what the customer wants. Agile teams are therefore created based on the roles needed in the team to deliver the product or the element of the product. Team members are selected based on their ability to perform in one or more roles in the team. In fact, the more roles that an individual can perform, the more valuable they are to the team and the organization, something we now have to consider from a remuneration perspective. In the new working environment, we have what I have chosen to call roles that are made up of competencies and people with competencies, some of which are likely to overlap. The job of matching people and roles then becomes one of matching competencies and maximizing the competencies of individuals in the team. This thinking is actually based on the IT concept of object orientation. For our purposes, we define object orientation as a methodology that enables a system, in our case a structure, that is built on the concepts of logical objects and works through the creation, utilization, and manipulation of reusable objects to perform specific tasks, processes, or objectives. We can look at structuring organizations rather like Lego. In Lego, we have pieces of different colors, shapes, and configurations that can be used in different combination to create different forms or structures. We look at roles as being similar to the Lego pieces. We need to define each role, its purpose, intended outcome, how it can be measured, and the competencies needed for the role. Then roles can be mixed and matched into jobs and teams, depending on the need of the organization at the time. Despite popular belief, research shows over and over again, money is not a motivator, but it can be a demotivator. The research listed here are all very large research studies. You can look them up. They all come to the same conclusion. Paying higher salaries than necessary is a waste of money. But the big question is, how much is enough? And this has to take into consideration skill shortages, especially at the higher levels, and a massive 24% IT staff turnover that can cost an organization 8 million or more for every 100 IT people employed. How do we find a balance between the needs and ambitions of the organization and the needs and ambitions of their staff? In 2019, I, together with a small group of volunteers, decided to have a look at the full spectrum of what we call developers and/or engineers. And this is what the picture looked like. We looked at front-end, back-end, full-stack, multi-stack, configurers, as well as programmers and system engineers and testers. Then we looked at the tasks, environments, complexities, etc. And we came to realize that this is a complex problem, not a complicated problem. The dilemma is, a developer really isn't just a developer anymore. This is a list of the possible variations of developer that we find in workplaces today. A developer, depending on their level of experience, will perform one and probably more of these functions. They'll code, script, configure, design, optimize, integrate, and test. They will do that in one and probably more of the following environments: user interface, component, system, specialist applications, and servers. The applications they work on will vary in complexity depending on their experience, from simple applications to complex to specialist applications. Then they can work on one or more technology stacks. Front-end stack, which consists of a single technology or multiple technologies, and they can work in the back end, which can also be single technology or multiple technologies, and they can work in both front and back end stacks, and of course the new DevOps stack. Then there are the technologies themselves, which include Python, Ruby, PHP, Node.js, Java, .NET, Golang, Rust. I'm sure that you've heard of some of these and more, and we haven't even started on the newer fields of automation. And then, and not really finally, they can work in one or other or both of the two popular methodologies, waterfall and agile. So we have over 30 different variations that don't even include all the technology possibilities, and we haven't even started on levels of experience yet. Then, as we know, developers grow as they get more experience. And for our purposes right now, these levels that we've listed below are as good as any. They're not far-fetched, and this is based on what is happening elsewhere in the world today. So we have a possibility of 5 levels, and let's say 30 variations. I then did a little exercise. It's not exactly scientific because I should have had some exclusions, so please don't challenge me on this. But even given some leeway, we still end up with a ludicrous outcome when it comes to looking at IT jobs, as we have previously known them. What this tells us is, if we have 30 different variations that we've identified and the 5 levels that we've agreed to, we can end up with over 46,000 IT job titles. If we reduce the number of variations to 5, which is not really possible today, we end up with 126 job titles. If we keep the 30 variations but reduce the levels to 3, we then end up with close to 500 job titles. This is neither reasonable nor feasible. I think we can all agree. And this is just in the field of development. We have to come to the realization that giving job titles to jobs the way we have in the past just isn't going to work going forward. We have to find other and better ways, and our proposal is to define unique roles that can be configured and reconfigured depending on the need of the organization at the time. As we all know, the most critical element of remuneration benchmarking is getting the job matching right. But today, trying to benchmark many of the IT jobs are like shooting at a moving target, as we've seen. When it comes to how people work and what they do, it's different in Agile organizations. Firstly, Agile organizations are about the team and the competencies that exist in the team to be able to deliver the work. The team members are expected to be able to take on more than one role in the team as and when needed. The structures are also flatter. Agile teams are more autonomous, enabling a broader span of control for management. One of the principles of agility is embracing change. The whole Agile process is about embracing change rather than following a plan that could end up with a not satisfactory outcome. A fundamental success factor of Agile teams is transparency, no surprises, no unfair practices, and a culture of trust with the team and between teams rather than the traditional command and control style of management. We also need to look at how this impacts on remuneration and why we need to rethink our remuneration strategy. IT is still experiencing scarcity of skilled talent, especially at the more experienced levels. This is a global experience, and with the dawn of work from anywhere, we can now very easily lose top talent to international organizations. This puts top talent in control of the terms of their employment, as we are seeing with the Great Resignation internationally. Performance management, as we know it in the past, has proven to not work. There is little correlation between people performance as measured by the traditional performance management system and actual organizational performance. The new field of employee experience, together with employee engagement and employer branding, have become critical areas of HR focus over the past couple of years. An Agile Compensation system has the following characteristics. It allows you to quickly react to market shifts or competitive forces by minimizing dependencies in the number of approvals required. It gives you the ability to dial up or dial down comp spend as business needs change, for example, when you need to address high attrition in your sales department. It allows you to continually meet the needs and preferences of your workforce as the makeup of your employee population shifts over time. The most important thing about having a good compensation plan is that it's not only fair, but it supports the culture of the organization. Done well, a salary formula can help you keep the trust, prevent demotivation, and pave the way to total transparency. A compensation plan needs to focus on a culture of good behaviors. And a good compensation plan helps everyone to focus on experimental learning and deliberate practice. From well-drafted research summarized by Daniel Pink in his book Drive, we know that for work that is cognitive-based, paying more for more work is a demotivator. The actual motivators are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. They are the true intrinsic motivators that create engagement in the workplace. The question is then, how do we pay people fairly for the value of their contribution to the success of the organization? We believe that the answer is moving from the traditional job evaluation systems to systems that are better suited to the newer ways of working. There are a number of approaches to modern remuneration practices, but the one that we believe best suits the IT environment of today is a combination of the competency-based and formula-based pay. This is an example of how we might see it working. The individual's roles that are needed are defined in terms of purpose, responsibilities, outcomes, and competencies needed. We establish through benchmarking the base rate of a pay for each role. That is, the rate at which a beginner starts working in that specific role, not job. Then we add factors to the rate, the criteria being what is important for the organization. In this example, we have Joe, who lives and works in Johannesburg or Gauteng. 80% of his time is spent in the developer role, 15% in a tester role, and 5% in a designer role. There is a base rate for each of those roles, and it is prorated based on the time spent in that role. Then for our example organization, we apply factors based on experience in the role, complexity of the system, number of technology stacks, number of environment stacks, methodology, and any specialist knowledge needed. Each criteria has a weighting that is applied to the base rate. These all add up to the final remuneration for the person. The criteria and weightings are set up by the organization based on what is important to the organization. Please note, this is an example only of what could be, not what should be. When considering implementation, the criteria and weightings need to be tested to ensure that no one is worse off for moving to a new system. The benefits of this formula-based approach to compensation are: it promotes transparency as the formula and criteria are known by all. It helps unite a disparate workforce. It establishes a sense of equity and fairness and helps develop the capabilities needed by the organization. It aligns the people with the values and goals of the organization and enables flexibility when needed. If you would like to explore how formula-based pay can work in your organization, please give us a call.